Welcome back to the shop, everyone. Today we're going to continue testing and working on the Yamaha VT700 triple. It's also known as the Yamaha Venture, and there's no spark. That's what the issue is. So we're going to figure out what we need to do there. We're going to test the obvious, the kill switch, the ignition switch. Then we're going to move on to stuff like the stator and the trigger coil. So let's dive right in. Alright, before we go too far, let me get you guys up to speed so far on what I've done. So, first thing I did is I went down here and I checked the ignition switch. There's a little plug right. It's tucked away really well. It's that white plug. Found in the diagram what I need to check, pin it out. It's working really well. I don't see anything wrong with it. Even though apparently, according to Peter, it was like sort of hot wired. I don't see any evidence of that anyways. Next thing I moved on to, trying to do this logically, of course, is the kill switch right up here on the handlebar. So I thought this was suspect because look at this. I've worked on Yamahas before. I have a Yamaha right now with the same style switch, and it does not bounce back like that. I thought that was super odd. However, I checked it, connector over here, and it's also showing a good indication. You got to hold it to kill the power. I mean, it's odd. I'm going to recommend him replacing it, but it does work. It shouldn't be killing spark. So the next thing I want to do is I want to check these connectors here, right underneath this cover, this little boot. These are the stator wires. So I managed to find the readings for that. So the red white and the red green wire are 189 to 230 ohms for these two, so we're going to probe those. And then these guys are 0.36 to 0.44 ohms, so we're going to check those as well. These are just all three white wires. These are your stator wires, this is your pickup coil. So let's test those. Grab our multimeter here. Set that in shot so you guys can see it. So what do we have here? There we go, up to 200 ohms. May have to go up one. Look at this mess of wires. That's the one thing about working with electrical. It's always a mess of wires. Not a big fan of that. But let's carry on here. Get this thing fixed up. We'll get her fixed up. Let's pop this connector open. Take a look inside. I don't see much in there. Maybe a little bit of moisture? I don't know. So obviously we're going to test going down into the coil. We're going to check these two, which are going to be nice and easy to test because you got a nice little receptacle to put the wires in, or your connectors in. Let me see here. Who designed this? My God, this is such a tight spot. Can barely get my fingers in there to hold two connectors at the same time. Okay, what do we have? I have to go up one scale, so 0.2, so that's basically 227 ohms. That is perfect. So that's good. The pickup coil is in good shape. I like to see that. But before we put these connectors back in, I'm going to put a little bit of dielectric grease in here. Alright, just a little dab into the connectors. You don't need to go crazy with this stuff. What it does do is it just helps prevent moisture from getting in there and causing corrosion on those little pins. And some of these pins are very, very small. And being that it is a snowmobile running in, harsh environments, it could probably stand to have a little bit of that. And we're going to connect these ones back together. So like that. And we're going to go on and test the stator coil now. That's a really tight connection. That doesn't feel quite right. It should come out much easier than that. Oh my, there we go. Oh, look at this. Let me zoom in on that. This is why it wasn't coming out so easy. It is full of corrosion, and that's where the dielectric grease may help. This, with any luck, will actually have fixed our problem, because the stator may not actually be bad, but it might not actually be sending power to the coils. Let's cross our fingers. Let's keep testing. Okay, so we should be getting 0.36 to 0.4 on the whites. And it doesn't matter which ones, because they're set up as a triangle in a sense. Another one that's tough to get. Bouncing a little bit because of the corrosion here. If I can actually get a good reading. 0.06 or 0.6, sorry. Oh, there's our 0.36, but it doesn't stay there for very long. Okay, I'm not liking this reading, so I'm going to clean this up first. I'm going to do a little bit of work on that, and we're going to see what we get afterwards. Alright, so I got in there, got it all cleaned out with a little brush, a little bit of parts cleaner. Let's test this again. So we were getting about 0.6, which is a little on the high side. Let's see if we can get it kind of in the range of our 0.45. And we're right there again. It's still the same, still 0.6. It's not super far off spec on both sides. So let's keep going through here, making sure do all three. And they're all the same. They're all 0.6. So they are a little on the high side. I'm going to say it's probably good. I'm going to give this a little bit of dielectric grease as well, because those were definitely corroded, as you saw. So maybe, just maybe, guys, we might have actually got lucky here. Because before I go too far and continue testing and not really know what fixed it, I want to make sure that this connection was maybe an issue, because like you saw earlier, well, hopefully you saw it earlier, it was sparking only when it let off, which was kind of weird. Never seen that before. But I'm going to just play with this connector a little bit, make sure that it gets a good connection. So we've got new spark plugs in place. I'm going to move this because I want you guys to see. Hopefully you guys will be able to see a spark if it actually happens. Okay, let's see if that did anything. Oh, yes! Yes! You guys see that? Okay, let me get close. I'm super stoked now. This, can't believe it. Check out this spark. Look how clean it is. Okay, I gotta stop moving. Super excited. Look at this. Now we got spark. Okay, I think I found a spot for you guys to be able to see the spark. Check it out. Yes, hopefully it stays that way. I'm going to make sure this connection is really, really clean, because clearly that seems to have been the problem. Something I need to point out too is after every time I tested something, such as the ignition switch, and then when I went over here to the stop switch, I was intermittently checking after I would do everything to make sure that if I changed anything or if I did any connections, that it didn't fix the problem. I've done it to myself so many times, guys, where I just check everything over and I'm doing connections and I'm cleaning them up and I don't check in between, but meanwhile, I get it running, but sometimes I don't know what it was. And I like to know what it is. So in this case, it was this connector. This happened to be the culprit. I guess it's not a super well sealed connector, as you can tell, compared to the other one. The trigger coil connector has a little seal in there. This one's kind of open, and I guess that's what this boot's for. So I'm going to clean it up a little bit more to make sure that the contacts are really good on it, and we're going to see if it fires. Okay, so I got the plug screwed back in. I've got the dielectric grease put into those connectors. We know it sparks. We've been cranking this thing over quite a bit, so that fuel pump should have hopefully by now filled up the 3 carburetors. Now hopefully this thing won't take much to fire. So let's put this thing into full choke. And let's give her a crank here. Some windows now, and he's got a bit of an exhaust leak, obviously, coming right from here, but otherwise, she runs good. Gotta love the sound of a triple. I don't know what it is, especially 2-stroke like this. I can't wait for the snow now. Well, that gave me an opportunity to use my exhaust fan up there, which is kind of nice. Sucked out all those toxic fumes. But now that we know it runs, and it runs well as far as I can tell, I'm going to start buttoning it up. So I'm going to put this handlebar pad back in place, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grease some of the locations here. So there's one on each side here, and then I'm going to do the whole undercarriage. There's about, I think, 4 or 5 of those. As you can tell, we got a couple here. So I'm going to raise it up, I'm going to grease that, and maybe we'll take it outside and go for a spin around the yard. Okay, so what I'm using here, guys, is just a white lithium grease, and that should be nice and thin enough that it won't thicken up too much during the winter time, which is what Yamaha actually recommends. Actually, most manufacturers recommend a white lithium, something that is good for sub-zero temperatures. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a couple of these fittings, pump them up in the grease. Everything will slide nice and good. While she's still in the air, I'm going to go ahead and do the track adjustment. And according to what I just read on the service manual, you put a 22-pound spring scale down here, like a fish scale, I would suppose. And you would have a 1-inch gap between the slide rail and the actual track. So this is a little bit on the loose side. I'm going to adjust that. And if I do have to adjust it, those are right back here. Right in those windows, you got the nut. So you're going to loosen off the axle here. There's a nut on the opposite side. And then you're going to go ahead and tighten those in. And you're going to make sure that when you're done, all of these clips are aligned on both sides. The best way to do that, fire up the sled, make the track roll, and don't touch the brake, just let it come down to a stop, and then measure it again. Now, if your track is too far to one side, what do? Well, you're gonna have to tighten up one side more than the other. But that can get tricky. You can chase your tail quite often if you're not tightening the right one. So the best thing to do is, if this gap is more, well, then you want to bring it in. So what you're going to do is, if this gap is more, you're going to tighten up this particular same side. And what that's going to do is that's going to pivot the axle at the back and bring it back towards the center. Now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead, drop her back down, give her the old penetrating oil treatment, spray a couple of cables, a couple of nice areas that we want to keep lubricated. I'm going to try and fire it up and maybe close the hood with this battery in, and if not, it should fire without the battery, and see if we can take it outside. Alright guys, so it's the next day. I tried firing it without the battery in it. Not recommended. Had a huge afterfire. Almost lost some hearing there. So did my camera person. She's complaining about some hearing loss. Maybe, I hope not. Just, you need the battery to get this thing started. And I can't go for a ride because look at this. We had a wicked rainstorm. During the middle of winter, we actually had some lightning, which is really crazy weather for us here. So I can't take it out anywhere. But what I am going to do is I'm going to make sure I can close this hood. And I might try and go a little ride around my yard here real quick to show you guys that it actually does work. So Hold on a sec. Oh. Alright, so that's not going to contact anything. We should be good.